सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। Hari Om. Today we are going to have a relook at the present text that we have taken, we have completed, Drik Drishya Vivek, otherwise called Vakshasudha. Like any other work of Shastra, Drik Drishya Vivek also looks at what we ought to know. We ought to know only three things essentially: Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara. That's all for us to know, understand, to run this life smoothly. So this text also deals with these three aspects, although it deals with Jiva aspect predominantly. Drik Drishya Vivek also provides ample opportunity for Mananam. It is also a very experiential study, extremely experiential, because it's typical of Vidyaranyaji and his guru, and they are very, very practical in their approach to the teaching methodology. And the methodology here is also very, very experiential. We have taken very, very practical, absolutely day-to-day life examples to explain certain very, very difficult concepts. The difficult concept here that we have seen is Drik Drishya Viveka, which means the discrimination between the seer and the seen. Why is this discrimination or distinction difficult? It is difficult because there is a lot of overlapping between the two. A lot of confusion arises. Further confusion arises because we realize in the process of learning that many of the seen become the seer themselves. So can there be something which is the seen as also the seer? Yes. So what is our purpose of discrimination here? Because we know that there is one seer who sees everything, the ultimate seer. The distinction also becomes very difficult because we don't understand the implications of how we look at things. It is also further compounded by various concepts, as we will see in due course of time. Concepts which actually do not belong to Vedanta, which have crept into our mindsets. They also create confusion. तो इस भेद को समझने में आपत्ति क्या है? एक आपत्ति तो यह है कि भाई अन्योन्य अध्यारोप. We superimpose the qualities of the Jiva onto the Atma, and we also transfer the attributes of the Atma onto the Anatma. It is first of all, it is essential to understand the difference here. It's not a very easy process. We have also seen that there are certain rules that have come about in the process of understanding these things. The first rule, the obvious rule, is that the seer and the seen are different. They have to be different. Logical. Then we have seen that the seen is outside and the seer is inside. दृक जो है वो अंतर्गत है, relatively speaking. It is more into inside. World objects are always outside. The eyes are inside. Although on the periphery, they are still inside. Likewise, the mind is inside. The mind which is seeing the eye is inside compared to the peripherally present nature of the eye with regards to the seen outside. The third rule that we have seen is that seen are many, the seer is always one. It is one eye which sees various scenes. Likewise, it is the one mind which looks at the eye which is at a different situations, under different conditions. The irritated eye, the bright eye, the dull eye, etc., etc., as Acharya had propounded in this work. Then we saw that no scene can see itself or it can see its seer. कोई भी दृश्य अपने दृष्टा को नहीं देख सकता. With these rules we had, which we understood in the process, we have also understood various Vedantic concepts that the Acharya had touched upon subsequently. Today, once again, we will go back to the Pratigya Shloka, the verse 1, the very first shloka. In fact, the very first shloka has everything in this Grantha, and everything else is just an explanation in attempting to understand this Pratigya Shloka. What is the Pratigya? What is the assertion in this verse? Essentially, the two aspects that come in the last two phases of this verse. We have the Drishyadi Vrittayah in the third pada and Drik Eva Natu Drishyah in the last pada. These are the only two things to understand. Essentially, it is the last pada which has to be understood. Drik Eva. Nothing beyond that. All this effort is to understand what is this Drik and why is it only the Drik, only the seer and not the seener. So, looking back at the Pratigya Shloka, we will initially look at the third pada, Drishyadi Vrittayah, using Vritti Vyakhyana, and we will then get on to understanding the Drik. This Drik has to be understood very clearly. Drik को समझना कठिन. It is difficult to understand Drik. कठिन इसलिए है कि वो अप्रमेय है. दृश्य तो प्रमेय है और दृक में दृश्यत्व नहीं है, कदापि नहीं है. इसलिए दृक को समझना कठिन है. इसको समझना है दृक को, दृक साक्षी, और इसको पूरी तरह से भली भांति विलक्षण करना है. As we have seen, there is an overlapping. There is a need to segregate the seer clearly from all that confusion that could arise. दृक को समझने में, in the process of understanding the seer, कई प्रश्न उठेंगे, वेरियस क्वेश्चंस विल कम अप. कई बार हम समझते हैं कि ये दृक् प्रमाता है, ये जानता है या जानने की चेष्टा करता है. क्या ये सच है? जो अप्रमेय है, क्या वो कभी प्रमाता बन सकता है? That also we have to see. The above analysis can be essentially done by using the Prasthanatraya and the normal Vedantic process that we adopt, Shravana, Manana, Nitidhyasana. Shravana by understanding the concepts or listening to or studying the concepts and understanding them thoroughly, and running our minds on those understandings repeatedly, Manan Prakriya. And finally, the Dhyan Prakriya, where we sit down to meditate upon these concepts, these ideas, to understand the Sakshi very clearly. So one can use Prasthanatraya for Shravanam and Mananam. Today we will take Vritti Vyakhyanam, as I mentioned earlier, and also we will take chapter 13, couple of shlokas, in fact essentially one verse from chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita, to understand one of the most complex aspects of Drik that has been expounded in this particular work. In the 13th chapter, Bhagavan calls this Sakshi as the Kshetrajna and the seen as the Kshetra. It is very easy to understand the scene, the scenery, the world outside, the world objects outside. We have seen them repeatedly. Even if they are new to us, we gain understanding rather very fast. To some extent, we also understand a little more complex process, our thoughts. We observe our thoughts, we also many times understand, mostly we understand our thoughts also. So the world objects are easy to understand. The mind, the eye is definitely very, very easy to understand. We know that the eye is able to see well, or it is dull today, there is some obstruction, there is some irritation in the eye. Everything about the eye is rather easy to understand as a lay person. I am not talking about as an ophthalmologist. And relatively speaking, the mind is a little more complex to understand. We have developed a lot of understanding about the mind, but unless we are careful not to get into any kind of misunderstanding, understanding the mind could be difficult. We'll hit a roadblock in that process. Certainly we'll hit a roadblock. For example, we understand, as Vedantins, we know we have compartmentalized the mind into 4 parts: Antakarana, Manaha, Buddhi, Chitta. Man Buddhi. We have understood the difference between the Man and the Buddhi in terms of the work that they do. Buddhi is the one which decides, Nishchayatmika Buddhi. When the thoughts take a decision, then the thought or that mind is called Buddhi. Mind is, after all, a flow of thoughts. And there is a desire coming up, it is Man. when there is a decision taken to pursue that desire or not, then we call it the buddhi. When we recall something, we call it smriti, chitta. This is fairly easy. In fact, to understand these thoughts, there is a treatise written by Patanjali Maharishi, and he has described in great details Panchavrittaya, the 5 types of thought processes that we have, which includes smriti as well as even nidra for that matter. And it's a fairly large treatise about the mind. In fact, Shankaracharya calls him Chitta Vritti Vyapara Visheshagya Patanjali Maharaj. He calls him the expert in the analysis of thoughts. So it's a great work done by him. And this itself shows how difficult it is to understand clearly what these thoughts are. Thoughts are multitude. And many a times we get confused between these thoughts. We assume that this is my mind working, all right. Many times we think, oh, this is the Sakshi talking to me. We have this concept called Antaryami, which creeps in and creates more confusion. The reason is simply the lack of clarity in identifying the Sakshi. The lack of apprehension, which is non-apprehension, creates misapprehension, as Gurudev pointed out. To understand this vikshepa of the mind, we have to take a closer look at the types of thoughts. I'm not talking about the Panchavrittaya. We will today talk only about 5 types of controlled thoughts. Just an example to show how subtle this matter is. We have these thoughts, we have this mind, and we have this controlled and very well directed thoughts. Niruddha manaha, which is what we adopt when we sit down to meditate. We try to focus our thoughts onto something very important, something desirable. Believe me, there are 5 types of vrittis in this category as well. देखें तो एक विचारालंबन है, which is a very well directed thought onto a subtle state, very focused thought on something very critical, something that we want to do. Then we have Vitarkalampan, which is the focused attention on gross activity like countering, etc., getting into argument, etc. Then we have Anandalampan, dedicated to the joyous state. Then subsequently, at a much later state of meditation, we get into Asmitalampan, where the only activity that the mind is engaged in is aham, aham, aham. Thinking about the self, repeatedly, continuously, something like akhandakara. There is nothing on the mind, there is no vritti there, there is total void, as if there is no mind at all. Now the point that I am driving at is these subtle categories of very, very well directed, controlled and focused thoughts are also only thoughts. ये केवल वृत्तियों का नियंत्रण ही नहीं है, ये केवल वृत्तियां ही हैं. They are thoughts alone. Even Niralamban, which is a state where there is a total void, is another vritti, another thought. After all, it's also a transaction, and every transaction is a vritti. Look at to what extent the acharyas have gone to explain to us these important concepts from Vedanta. Now, we have done a bit of Vritti Vyakhyanam. The point to take home from this is simple, that anything that is happening in the mind is part of the mind. It is also a drishya. Drishyadi vrittaya. It's a very, very firm statement coming from the Acharya that all the controlled thoughts are also seen. When I'm trying to meditate, focus on the Akriti of Mahavishnu or Shambha Shiva, I know I'm doing it. I'm trying to focus on that Akriti, on that form. When I'm on to Asmitalamban, I know that I'm trying to focus on just Aham. And when I'm getting off all this, I know that I'm trying to reach the ultimate. I'm aware of this. So it is also a transaction. This should not be ever confused with the seer, the ultimate seer. That is what we are coming to now. Drik eva. That seer which is never the seen. Drik eva natu drishya. And this seer, to understand this seer, Acharya had pointed out certain indicators, recalled from the Shastras, of course, very, very strong indicators to understand this trick in the 5th verse of the work, which is called the Mahima Shloka. इस साक्षी की महिमाएं बताई हैं, and we will look at those indicators to understand this Sakshi better and to not to get confused with other activities, other अन्य व्यापार जो हैं मन के, उसके साथ इसका विलक्षण करेंगे हम आगे जाके. Sakshi, first of all, to begin with, is the one which is self-illumined and which illumines everything around, everything else. Everything is known because of the Sakshi. And Sakshi doesn't need anything, Vina sadhanena, to illumine itself or illumine anything else. It illumines by its very presence. And it illumines everything. Sarvam idam vibhati. This is the first Mahima that the Acharya pointed out here. She brought about here. And Sakshi doesn't illumine by will. Sakshi illumines by its very presence. Sanidhya matrena. By its very presence, the light is able to help us see an object. It doesn't get into any kriya. It just is there. And we are able to see things. Everything gets illuminated because of it. It is the ultimate seer. This ultimate seer we will of course see in a little more detail when we come to the 22nd verse of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita. The second Mahima that the Acharya mentioned is about Advaitam. It is the ultimate seer. It alone exists. It has no beginning, no end. It just is. Asti eva. It reminds the seer. All other seers we have seen have become the seen. And because of the presence of those seen objects, whether it is the world objects or the eye or the mind, we know that there is a seer of these things. दृश्य है तो दृष्टा भी है. Since it alone is the ultimate seer, there is nobody else seeing this Sakshi. If it was there, we would have known. And if there was somebody else, he would have seen the Sakshi. Since we do not know, we have not seen the Sakshi, it has never become the seen. It doesn't have Drishyatvam at all. It can never be seen. That's another matter. But had we seen it, we would have known about it. Had anybody seen it, he or she or we would have known about it. We've known everything about it. And whereas we say that it is aprameya, beyond cognition. So there is nothing that can see, because there is nothing else other than it, other than this seer, other than this Sakshi. So it is Advaitam. It is single. It alone is. The third Mahima that Acharya had discussed to some extent is Aparichinnata. Beyond limitations, not having any limitations. The strongest limitations are place, geographic location, time, being in certain time and not being in other times, desha, kala, parichinna. Everything that is seen, whether they also have a seer at some time or not, everything else is parichinna, limited by desha, kala, vastu. This seer is not limited by desha, kala, vastu. Desha, kala, vastu aparichinna hai. It is not limited by space because it exists everywhere. It pervades everything. There is no place it is not there. And there is no time that it has not been there. It has been there since time immemorial. It has been there before time actually. It has got no end. Ananta hai. Anadhi ananta hai. It is aja hai. It is never born. Anything that is born will have these limitations. It will have an end. So, kala parichinna to ho hi gaye. And I cannot be in Bombay and at the same time I cannot be in Paris. If I am in Bombay, I am only in Bombay at a particular time, at this time. And for that matter, I can't be in Paris in the next moment. That is also there. So I am limited by time, space and objects. I am a parichinna vastu. I means I am talking about Krishna. I am 5 feet 11 inches tall. I am 105 kgs in weight. I have very clear descriptions. My weight may change, but I am defined by that weight. I am defined by how I look, the complexion. I cannot improve, I cannot become fairer. I have this limitation. सो दृश्य का मतलब ही परिच्छिन्नता है, चाहे वो देश का हो, काल का हो, वस्तु का हो. द ईफिल टावर इज गोइंग टू बी देयर ओनली इन पेरिस, nowhere else. We all go and see, look at it. We had to go to Paris to see that. And it was not there before 200 years. It may not be there after another 1000 or 2000 years. देश है, परिच्छिन्न है, काल अपरिच्छिन्न है. वस्तु परिच्छिन्न कैसे होते हैं? स्थूल है, सूक्ष्म है, कार्य कारण है. The various limitations. So the Sakshi is aparichina. This is the third Mahima that the Acharya mentioned here. दृश्यत्व का मतलब ही परिच्छिन्नता है. Anything that is seen will be limited, and anything that is limited is always the seer. It is always the seen. It may have been a seer at times. It may have been a relative seer, relative to anything else, a lesser subtle object, but it has limitations. This is another rule that we can frame now. Sakshi is the one who is the ultimate seer. It is the seer alone, and it sees everything. This is important to understand. Then we come to the fourth Mahima that the Acharya mentioned, Nirvikara. We know from our earlier lessons that anything that is born is subject to modification. It has parts, it has a beginning, it has an end, which is called Bhava Vikara. We have seen that the body has Shat Vikara, starting from the birth and growth and constancy, then depletion, and finally extinction. Vinashyati at the end. Jayati in the beginning, Vinashyati at the end. Our entire life is between these two, from womb to tomb, as Gurudev says. Whereas the Sakshi is Aja, unborn. It has got no parts. क्योंकि किसी का विनाश या तो क्षय से होता है या फिर अंगों के क्षय से होता है. Depletion of the parts or the loss of parts. I lose both my lungs, for example, then I cannot survive. I lose my liver, I cannot survive. Any part of my body, any of these important organs cease to function, I will not be there. तो या तो अंग का नाश होने पे या क्षय होने पे, multiple organ failure. We keep hearing this nowadays very often. And acharyas don't say anything out of blues. When, for example, let's take one small example here, how the argument goes in Vedanta. Just to understand this, Aja hai. When I say Aja hai, Upanishads, every Upanishad says the Sakshi, Atma is Aja hai. It is not born, it is unborn. Now I have to prove that it is unborn. I cannot just state something and say this is the fact. Every fact has to be established. That is why we have Tarka Shastra, which explains the necessity to get into every aspect of life, every question that can affect our life, every aspect. And we have to find an answer, and Vedanta has answers to all these questions. Anything to do with life, it has got answers. And anything that it states, anything that the Upanishads state, they have an answer to that. Acharyas have taken pains to explain all this to us. For example, Aja, how do you prove that it is unborn? In, to arrive at this, we will take the concept of abhava. Abhava means something which is absent, जिसका अभाव है. अब ये जो अभाव है इसके भी कई कैटेगरीज हैं. एक कैटेगरी है प्राग अभाव. लेट मी स्टेट द कैटेगरीज फर्स्ट. प्राग अभाव, प्रध्वंस अभाव, अन्योन्य अभाव एंड अत्यंत अभाव. When we look at any object, anything in this universe, the first three actions apply, abhav जो है. The last atyant abhav refers to something which has never been there, which will never be there. The sky flower, for example, it's never been there. You don't have a flower in the sky, nor will we ever have it. उसका तो टोटल अभाव है, अत्यंत अभाव है, कभी हो ही नहीं सकता. बट बाकी जो तीन अभाव हैं उनको हम एक एक करके ले सकते हैं. प्राग अभाव वो है जो कुछ वस्तु पहले नहीं थी पर अब है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल घट, पॉट. पॉट वॉज नॉट एग्जिस्टेंट अर्लियर. The potter created it, so now it exists. It did not exist earlier than the time when the potter created it. इसका मतलब है it was absent prior to being created. Okay? It got created, it was born. And its prag abhav, its absence before the creation had come to an end. प्राग अभाव सा अंत होता है, शांत होता है, सा अंत, और अनादि होता है. अब when we talk about consciousness, साक्षी की बात करते हैं तब, तो इसका प्राग अभाव का निरूपण कौन कर सकता है? Who can tell us? जड़? Something that is inanimate can tell us about when the consciousness was born? Not possible. तो जब तक आप प्राग अभाव, प्रायर नॉन एग्जिस्टेंस एस्टैब्लिश नहीं करते हो, unless and until you establish the non-existence prior to a certain period of time, and its existence subsequently, you cannot say something is born. That is the definition of birth. It was not existent earlier, it is now existent. When we come to Pradvansha Bhav, it is Pradvansha Bhav का beginning तो है. Pradvansha Bhav is destruction. An object gets destroyed. It ceases to exist. मृत्यु का मतलब यही है कि भाई somebody ceases to exist. Ceases to exist means he or she was there earlier. इसे existence establish हो जाता है और ceasing to exist becomes permanent. प्रध्वंस अभाव जो है वो अनादि है. So, who will prove? There is nobody who can prove these two aspects as far as the Sakshi is concerned, as far as the consciousness is concerned. So, we have the Shastras have clearly established their statement that Atma is Ajaha, it is unborn. Because you cannot call anything as born unless and until you have established the Pragabhav. And coming on to the universe, that also has to be, the birth also has to be established. And we have this rule that anything that is born will have to come to an end. So coming to the fourth aspect, ये दृश्य अव्यय है, असंग है, एक रस है, निर्विकार है. It is not subject to modification. For modification, you have to have a form. I am fat. I can slim down. A form has to be there. इसीलिए हम कहते हैं कि साक्षी में दृश्यत्व नहीं है. दृश्यत्व नहीं है तो विकार भी नहीं हो सकता. Any दृश्य, any form has got boundaries. Here we are talking about somebody who has got no boundaries, who is there everywhere, unlimited, existence everywhere, sarvagata. Now we come to the last of the important mahima that the Acharya pointed out in this work, akriya hai. Now I am putting more emphasis on this particular aspect today, and here we take the aid of Shankaracharya's commentary in the chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita to understand our Sakshi better. Because in chapter 13, Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga hai. Acharya very clearly distinguishes the Kartritva aspect. Who is the doer? From which we can very clearly infer that Atma is not the doer. Now we have seen in the Vritti Vyakhyanam that we tend to assume that certain activities of the mind are actually the activities of the Sakshi. Okay. Now to reinforce that, we will look at this particular shloka from chapter 13. उपदृष्टा अनुमंता च भर्ता भोक्ता महेश्वरः परमात्मेति चाप्युक्तः देहेऽस्मिन् पुरुषः परः. Here there are certain terms used. Upadrishta, Anumanta, Bharta, Bhokta, the seer, the permitter, the nurturer, the enjoyer, etc., etc. All these nouns are on account of a verb. I see, I become the seer. I permit, I allow, I become the permitter. I enjoy, I become the enjoyer. I nurture something, I become the nurturer. So here Acharya explains these terms. Do they refer to the Atma? Is the question here. It is, when you look at the verse on the face of it, it says, it talks about the Ishvara, who is the seer, Upadrashta. Now, if we get into the commentary of Shankaracharya, it becomes very clear to us that Atma is not the actor, it is not the activity doer in any of this. Let's take them one by one. Upadrashta. Upadrashta approximate observer, an adverb. The meaning, of course, here is that he is a revealer. He stays close by, in close proximity, and reveals everything to you so that you can see. It is you, the Jivatma, which is seeing, and the Atma is the revealer. In the text, of course, Acharya has mentioned about Atma revealing by lending consciousness to the Chidabhas. And this lending is done by mere presence of the Atma. Sanidhya matrena. By its very mere presence. It doesn't do anything. Vina sadhanena. Acharya has very clearly expressed that. There is no activity involved here. By its mere presence, everything gets illumined, everything is seen. Only by its close proximity, Sanghat Chetana ke karan. Matlab, Atma is very close and the reflections falling on the Chidabhasha, I am able to see everything. I, the Krishnan, Jivatma, is able to see everything. Shankaracharya uses the word Swayam Akritaha. It perceives without the act of perceiving. So it sees without the act of seeing. There is no activity involved on the part of Atma here. This is what the Acharya has explained here, very clearly explained. Acharya gives another term to this observer, Upadrishta. He calls it the intimate observer. Intimate observer, somebody who is very close, somebody who is aparoksha. It also says, when you say intimate observers, it also talks about other observers. It is a relative term. It talks about other observers as well. Mind is an observer. It is the other observer. In this text, of course, we have called Sakshi the ultimate observer or the only observer. We also called it the observer alone, Drikeva. So it is the intimate observer. Everything happens in its mere presence, in proximity. And the third term used for this Upadrashta by the Acharya is Sarvadrashta. It sees everything. It observes all. Which reinforces our earlier conclusion in the text that Sakshi is the seer of all. Acharya also gives an example here of the yajna preparations, the process of yajna, Mahayajna, very large scale yajna, where there are various participants. There are participants from each of the Vedas, all the 4 Vedas. There will be an Acharya from each of the Veda, and he will have 3 or 4 assistants with him. And there is somebody, one of these people will be also taking care of, will be watching as to how things are proceeding, whether they are going in order. If something goes wrong, what ought to be done, how it has to be remedied, etc., etc. And the Acharya says there is one more person here who doesn't do anything. He just is there and observes. In the Purusha Suktam, when we say Trisapta Samidakritaha, 21 numbers, the 21st one is this Drishta who does not get involved in the process of the yajna at all. The various aspects of the yajna is partly handled by the Acharya from the Rig Veda, Acharya from the Samaveda, Hotru. Acharya from the Atharva Veda. And this Acharya Brahma from the Atharva Veda is the one who is closely watching all the activities and suggests remedies if something goes wrong. And this last observer, he is only there to observe. He will not get into the proceedings at all at any stage. Even if everything goes wrong, he does not participate. Let it go wrong, it's fine. The yajna is collapsed. It's become unfruitful. It could not be completed. Fine. If it could not be completed because the precautions or the remedial measures could not be taken at that particular time, it has to be dropped. Fine. But this drishta will do nothing. Our sakshi is like this drishta. Acharya has given this example. Likewise, Acharya explains Bharata, who is the nurturer, in whose presence Sakshi lends existence, lends consciousness to all the indriyas, all the jnanendriyas and the karmendriyas. And that is how it is called Anumanta. Sorry, I missed Anumanta. Permitter. It lets the indriyas function freely as they want. We say, no, we don't have control on the indriyas. Let the indriyas function. It permits. The permitter means that in its presence, the indriyas get into action. Likewise, Bharta, it lends existence, it lends consciousness, and the Prakriti provides experiences to this Chetana, to this Atma. In return, Bhokta. Every thought is soaked in consciousness, and hence the Sakshi is as though consumes these thoughts or goes through this experience as though. Let's recall or remember that Sakshi is the illuminator of these modifications of the mind. These modifications happen in the mind. I am happy, I am sad, I am angry, I am upset, I am thrilled, I am elated. All these changes take place in the mind and they belong to the mind alone. That is why we got in the Vritti Vyakhyanam, even the void mind is a transaction that belongs to the mind. That is why we talked about the Vritti in greater detail today. The illuminator illumines the anger of the mind. It is the mind which is angry. And I say, I am angry. I am the Sakshi. I am just bringing up front the anger of the mind, the particular status of the mind, state of the mind. So these terms that we saw here, the verbs that we saw here are accorded to the Sakshi when it comes into conjunction with the Antakarana, the BMI complex, and these Upadrashta, Anumanta, Bharta, Bhokta refer to the Tvam Padartha, Tvam Pada Lakshyartha. The Bhagavan mentions about two more descriptions, Ishvaraha, Maheshwaraha, subsequently, which are Tat Pada Lakshyartha, which refers to the Ishvara. And these four refer to the Jivatma. This distinction has to be clear now. I hope it is clear. Acharya has taken pains to explain this to us in greater detail. And this description very clearly expounds the fact that the Atma is Nishkriya. Akriya is a better word. It is devoid of any action. So I cannot say that the Sakshi is there within me as Antaryami and it is guiding me. That's one of the reasons we got confused between Sakshi and the other transactions of the mind. So दृक् एव न तो दृश्य है. यहाँ दृश्य का दो विभाग हुआ है, सजीव और निर्जीव. When Sangat Chetana came into contact with the BMI complex, सजीव और निर्जीव का भेद तब हुआ क्योंकि ये जो रिफ्लेक्शन है वो सजीव हो गया है. बाकी प्रपंच में जो जड़ वस्तुएं थे वो निर्जीव रहे, और ये जो मैं जीवात्मा, अपने आप को मैं कृष्ण समझता हूँ, कृष्ण कहता हूँ अपने आप को, मैं सजीव हूँ साक्षी के कारण. When we look at this Tat Padarth and Tamam Padarth together, this shloka from Bhagavad Gita also becomes a Mahavakya. They are one. This Jivatma and this Paramatma, termed here as Maheshwara and Paramatma. Maheshwara hai because Maha Ishwara hai. It is an all-pervading and independent Atma in every kshetra, every scene. Kshetrajna chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. In this very chapter, second shloka, Bhagavan Krishna makes this bold statement, sarva kshetreshu bharata. I am that kshetrajna in every kshetra. Every kshetra, the kshetrajna is different. But he says, I am that kshetrajna in every kshetra. That kshetrajna is the one who knows that particular kshetra. Paramatma, because he is the seer, drishta of all the other atmas. What are the other atmas? The Panchakosha hai. अन्नमय कोश है, मनोमय कोश है, विज्ञानमय कोश है, आनंदमय कोश है. ये सब कोश हैं जिनको हम आत्मा समझते हैं. एट वेरियस स्टेजेस, वेरियस पॉइंट्स ऑफ टाइम वी लुक एट देम एज आत्मा. इन सारी अविद्या कल्पित आत्माएं हैं. उन सब आत्माओं को जो दृष्टा है, द सीयर ऑफ ऑल, इवन दिस पंचकोश है, इज दैट दृष्टा दैट वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट. हरि ओम. श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः.